The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try when...
Hello, this is Patty Hunter of Patty's Page, and we are here at Cerruti's Banquet and Catering Hall. I should have realized. Anyways, this is my special guest, Melissa Odden.
Odden, O-H-D-E-N. Yep.
Odden. It's a beautiful name. Well, welcome to my show.
Thanks for having me.
And we're going to ask you some questions about what happened to you when you were first born and lead it up to the present.
Sounds good.
So, you had, when you were in your mother's womb, what happened?
Yeah, I have a pretty unique life story. 40 years ago, I now know that my birth mother actually had an abortion forced upon her as a college student. And that procedure was meant to end my life. The particular abortion procedure that was forced on her is called a saline infusion abortion. And so that actually involved injecting a toxic salt solution into the amniotic fluid surrounding me in the womb. The intent of that toxic salt solution was to poison me to death. It would scald the child as it moved internally into the organs. And typically the procedure lasted about 72 hours. Their life was successfully ended by that toxic salt solution. And then premature labor would be induced with the intent of the woman then delivering that deceased child. We actually know through my medical records that I soaked in that toxic salt solution for over 5 days. The medical professionals kept trying time and time again over those 5 days to induce my birth mother's labor. And they finally didn't succeed until that 5th day. And that day I should have been delivered dead as a successful abortion, but I was actually born alive.
God was looking out for you, girl.
He always has.
I mean, she is so blessed. I'm so happy that you survived it. So what happened after you were born and they discovered you not touched at all? You're a beautiful baby girl. So what happened?
I wish I could say that when I was born alive, everybody rejoiced, but this was not supposed to happen. And I actually now know that when I was delivered alive, there were demands made that I be left to die. And, I was left for a period of time there in the hospital, and ultimately I know that a nurse actually was unwilling to just leave me there and sent me off to the NICU, and they started the medical care that ultimately sustained my life.
So, how old were you? Were you adopted?
When that abortion was completed on my birth mom, the abortionist indicated he thought my birth mom was about 5 months pregnant with me, but the fact that I was able to live and I weighed almost 3 pounds actually showed the medical professional she was probably closer to like 31 weeks.
Late term.
Very late term, yeah, 31 weeks pregnant with me.
Yeah.
But whether I was 31 weeks or 31 days, the intent for my life was always for it to be ended by that abortion. But I was adopted.
When? Oh.
Not long after I was delivered alive. Went home to my family less than 3 months after I survived that abortion, and grew up knowing I was adopted, grew up knowing I was born premature. What I didn't know, of course, was the story behind my adoption.
So how old were you when you found out about this?
I was actually 14, which is just a rough age in general, I think, for most people. But You know, it wasn't supposed to come out at that time. It's just one of those things that ended up coming forward through my own sister's unplanned pregnancy. And, you know, when I found out the truth about surviving an abortion, it was absolutely devastating. You know, I never thought for a second that I could be somebody who survived abortion. Back then, I didn't even know that abortions could fail and children could live. And so the fact that I'm perfectly healthy today, none of this, you know, absolutely, amen. But none of this ever prepared me for that news. And so it was devastating. And I struggled with that knowledge. I didn't want to be the girl who survived an abortion. You know, now I've come to accept and appreciate that. But no, years ago, this is not who I wanted to be. I wanted to be like everybody else, right?
Yeah. So, as you grow older, you want to know who your real parents were?
Who my biological
Parents, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a lot of questions, understandably, but I also wanted them to know that I'm not angry. You know, I'm not bitter at all. And my faith, you know, has told me time and time again to love them and forgive them. And so I wanted them to know that. And, you know, started looking for them when I was about 19 years old, didn't find them until I was about 30. And that's interesting in and of itself. Huh? Yeah.
So did you find your mom?
You know, I did. We ended up not truly connecting until about 5 years ago now. You know, I had initially found her parents and had some communication with them years ago, but, you know, they had made it clear that any messages I gave them to pass along to her just wouldn't be passed because they were, you know, completely estranged. They had no relationship. And so it really wasn't until one of her cousins contacted me about 5 years ago that we started emailing back and forth and putting together the puzzle pieces of both of our lives, because she had part of the story and I had an even bigger part of the story, and so together we were able to piece together what happened those days.
Have you been touring?
I do. I travel. This time of year I travel an awful lot. I've been on the road for I don't even know how many days right now. So, you know, it depends on the time of the year. This is a very busy time of the year, and there are other times where I can be home for months at a time. But, you know, for me, it's absolutely worth it to sacrifice my time, and I've sacrificed my anonymity. You know, I could have lived a very quiet life, which I did for a period of time, but I know that I was called to share this story in order to make a difference in our world.
So how long have you been touring? Are you in Canada or the world or just the United States?
I live in Kansas City with my family, so I spend a lot of my time touring various places in the United States and Canada.
Canada, yes.
Yeah,
Where did you need up there?
Yeah, I've been to Ireland, I've been to Australia, get asked to go lots of places, but with young children, you know, I try to focus my time.
You got more than one child?
We do. We have a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Good girl. I bet.
That 3-year-old's a firecracker.
I'm sure she. Have you been in front of the government talking about what's happened to you and what you want to see being done?
Absolutely. I've testified before both the House and the Senate here in the United States. I've testified before the Australian Parliament. I've spoken to members in the Irish Parliament. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So you've been around.
Yeah, well, and trust me, if I can do this, anybody else can do it.
Thank you so much for your time this morning, Mr. Chairman and representatives. 327,653. This is the number of abortions that Planned Parenthood's 2014 fiscal report lists as being completed that year. Based on these numbers, 897 children will lose their lives to an abortion completed by Planned Parenthood each and every day. Why do I find this horrific? Because I actually have a lot in common with them. I was meant to be one of them. I should have been just another statistic, but by the grace of God, I am more than a statistic. I come here to you today as a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a master's level prepared social worker, and yes, as an abortion survivor. From a botched abortion to the dreaded complication, a child who lives, I've been called just about everything that you can imagine. But if you want to turn your attention up to the screen, as you can see in my medical records from 1977, kind of right there in the middle, saline infusion for an abortion was done, but was unsuccessful. And in other times throughout my medical records, you will read statements like, the complication of my birth mother's pregnancy was a saline infusion abortion. You could certainly say that saline infusion complicated the pregnancy. It has taken years to unravel the secrets surrounding my survival, to have contact with my biological family, and even medical professionals that cared for me. And although there are still unanswered questions, what I do know is that my life was intended to be ended by that abortion. And even after I survived, my life was in jeopardy. You wouldn't know it by looking at me today, but in August of 1977, I also survived a saline infusion abortion. And as Gianna shared, that saline infusion abortion involves injecting a toxic salt solution into the amniotic fluid surrounding the preborn child. The intent of that toxic salt solution is to scald the child to death from the outside in. For days, I soaked in that toxic salt solution, and on the 5th day of the procedure, my biological mother, who was a 19-year-old college student, delivered me after her labor was induced. I should have been delivered dead that day as a successful abortion. In 2013, I learned through contact with my biological mother's family that not only was this abortion forced upon her against her will at the age of 19, but also that it was my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, a nurse, who delivered me in this final step of the abortion procedure at St. Luke's Hospital in Sioux City, Iowa. Unfortunately, I also learned that when my grandmother realized that the abortion had not succeeded in ending my life, she demanded that I be left to die. I may never know how exactly 2 nurses who were on staff that day found out about me, but what I do know is that their willingness to fight for medical care to be provided to me ultimately sustained my life. And I know where children like me were left to die at St. Luke's Hospital. I met a nurse there who delivered a child much like me in 1976. She delivered a little boy after a failed saline infusion abortion, but she followed her superior's orders, and she placed him there in a utility closet in a bucket of formaldehyde to be picked up later as medical waste after he was left there to die alone. A bucket of formaldehyde in a utility closet was meant to be my fate after I survived that abortion attempt. I weighed a little less than 3 pounds when I survived. I suffered from jaundice, severe respiratory problems, and seizures for an extended period of time. And one of the first notations in my medical records by a doctor after I survived is that I looked like I was about 31 weeks gestational age when I was delivered. Despite the miracle of my survival, the doctor's prognosis for my life was very poor initially. My adoptive parents were told that I would suffer from multiple disabilities throughout my life. Yet here I am today, perfectly healthy. Yet I know it isn't just how abortion ends the life of children like me that isn't talked about in today's world. It's also not discussed what happens to children like me who live. I can tell you we are your friend, your neighbor, your coworker, and you would likely never guess by passing us on the street that we survived what we did. In my work as the founder of the Abortion Survivors Network, I have had contact with 203 of these other survivors. Letters from some of those survivors have been submitted to this committee. I'm here today to share my story to not only highlight the horror of abortion taking place at Planned Parenthood, but to give a voice to other survivors like me, and most importantly, to give a name, a face, and a voice to the hundreds of thousands of children who will have their lives ended by Planned Parenthood this year alone. As you consider the horrors of what happens at Planned Parenthood each day, I would urge you to remember my story, and Gianna's too. We may not have survived abortions at Planned Parenthood, but the expectation for our lives to be ended by abortion are the very same as those who do lose their lives there. And I have long believed that if my birth mother's abortion would have taken place at a Planned Parenthood, I would not be here today. Completing over 300,000 abortions a year provides them with the experience to make sure that failures like me don't exist. As a fellow American and as a fellow human being, I deserve the same right to life, the same equal protection under the law as each and every one of you. Yet we live in a time where not only do such protections not exist, but my own tax dollars and yours go to fund an organization that has perfected the very thing that was meant to end my life. And this must end.
5-6 years ago, when they were over at the other place, Allen County Right to Life, we had to go upstairs, I remember that. And I saw you, and you were talking about, there was this big booklet, and we were reading something. It was, I'm trying to remember what it was called now, but it was like taking a course with you. Yeah, big white book, or not a book, but anyways. That's how I met you many moons ago,
It was a long time.
and I'm so glad that you are wonderfully talking about what's going on with Planned Parenthood. You talk about Planned Parenthood?
When duty calls, right? Tonight I won't be talking about Planned Parenthood. I didn't survive at Planned Parenthood. I survived at a hospital, but you know what? I do talk about Planned Parenthood in the abortion industry, and I do truly believe that if my birth mother's abortion would have taken place at a Planned Parenthood, I would not be alive today.
That's true. I mean, how do you see the law changing what's happening now with Trump?
I think we're making progress, right? I think we all have a lot of hope that this certain presidency and what we're going to see happen with the Supreme Court, I think we all have a lot of hope that maybe finally legislatively we will see Roe versus Wade overturned. But I always have to be very honest, you know, this is a heart issue. And it was a heart issue that was turned into a political issue with Roe versus Wade. But it's truly a heart issue. We have a heart issue when it comes to abortion in the United States. And so we need to change this culture that has accepted abortion as a solution to problems and, you know, peel away the words choice and right and talk about what abortion truly is and the consequences of it for all of us. And so, you know, that's my greatest goal is to recreate a culture of life.
Yes, it's been a culture of death since the 60s, hasn't it? Me generation, I think of myself first, forget about anything, and they forget that life, they shouldn't be afraid, they should not be afraid of life, especially their own baby, you know? They shouldn't be afraid.
Well, and we need to do more to address the societal problems that women are facing, right? I mean, we know that the majority of abortions take place because of psychosocial reasons, so lack of adequate housing, concerns about child care, employment, lack of support by their parents, domestic violence, right? The list goes on and on. And so we need to address those root causes that drive so many women to abortion in the first place.
And there's peer pressure, boyfriend or husband or...
Coercion, yes. Coercion and force,
Because they don't really want to kill their baby, do they? I mean, they're not that cold-hearted, all the people who have abortions.
Absolutely.
They are pressured to.
Absolutely.
Like your mom.
Most women have so very little choice when it comes to abortion.
And they get so scared, they don't know where they're going. And they need people like Allen County Right to Life and Melissa here and others who are trying to save our babies from being destroyed. You know, 60 million people since the 60s and 70s or more in the United States have been aborted. That's a whole country, people, you know?
Well, and that's hundreds of millions of lives forever
Yes.
changed.
Yes. And also, we're killing out more girls than the boys. So like in China, they're starting to think, uh-oh, maybe we better not kill the baby girls because we're starting to get low on females here in this country. Honey, thanks.
Thank you. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Thank you.
This is Melissa Oden.
Thank
and I'm
you.
Patty Hunter. Thank you. I'm Patty Hunter. This is Patty's Page, and I'll see you next week. God bless.
Godspeed, my love, until we meet again. You're always in my heart and every dream. Don't let this time apart give in to all our God will keep us close from up above. So until we meet again, Godspeed, my love. God is with us all.